Well, I'm already ahead of you.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
I'm back. I'm streaming.
Who would have guessed?
Yeah. After 1 month of being lazy, I'd say. We
However,
still did some progress in that time, but
yeah,
it's
I was gonna
not.
say it's not all bad, homie.
Yeah.
All right, so since you're going to be doing the inventory system, at least that's what we had talked about today. I guess we can start the stream by actually documenting what we need uh, or what we plan on doing. So I wanted to go through the rest of the gameplay mechanics that were described here and sort of elaborate. So we'll say elaborate gameplay mechanic systems. And obviously, more items is something else I will be looking for, plus bounties. And then you wanted to do inventory system, and then I'm not sure what else, but I know that at some point we are going to need to actually make that system that will inherit that will generate this table through our engine instead of through the PHP. And it'll inherit it populate the items and other such entities through the definitions system. So I guess for now we can just have items.def as like a thing that you'll have to end up implementing. But ideally, we can start thinking about how we're going to graduate from the PHP table to the engine table. That obviously, I guess it'll still be PHP because it's web dev, but coming
Yeah.
from the definitions.
I don't think we'll actually have to use any PHP. But that's after we. Oh, I guess we still have to for CM Brood War.
Yeah, Cosmonarchy Brood War will need to stick because we don't. I mean, I guess I could generate the same like the definitions files that match the data, but that can be something that I do later, basically, if we decide to do that at all. Unless there's like, is there a particular reason beyond it being kind of annoying that there's still the old system in place for one thing on the site that like, is there really a downside to it beyond it just being kind of lame that we can't easily modify it or whatever?
So would it be a downside to leave it in place or to replace it?
Yeah, to leave the Brood War one in place.
It's probably. I guess the only downside is that you have to maintain it in a different way.
Yeah, but I'm not really going to be changing too much about it, is my thinking.
Yeah, so it's probably not a problem.
Yeah.
And it will also mean that any changes we do to the original to the new system will not appear on the Brood War system, which is probably desirable.
Yeah, I think so. What's up, Luciferius? You have you'd and threed in the same sentence. And I have noticed it, which is presumably what you wanted me to do. That is the call and response situation we find ourselves. So, is there anything you would add to this list for what we're going to be doing on this stream? Anything you want me to start doing, or?
I guess we could have some design discussions if you want.
Yeah, is there something that you wanted to touch on before we get in the thick of things, or is there anything that's on your mind?
No, not really. Just whatever comes our way.
Yeah. I guess since we had that brief discussion in the channel, maybe there's something there that we haven't. I can't remember if we actually finished that topic. Well, basically, I had said my response, but I hadn't seen anything back from you. So basically, the most recent discussion that was going on the server about Onitar was related to the bounty system. So bounties have received some changes conceptually to make it so that they are harder, if not downright impossible, to gimmick. In the sense that you can abuse the mechanic, like beforehand, conceptually, it would be possible for you to see what bounties were available, and then based on that, go satisfy the requirements for a bounty, either because it tells you what those requirements are, or because you just memorized it if we decided to obfuscate that information before buying, which I don't know why we would, but say that we did, you'd still be able to like eventually build up for map knowledge. So it's not really, or game knowledge. It wouldn't be something that would scale. you'd be able to satisfy the requirements, come back home, buy the bounty, and immediately turn it in, essentially without having the risk of dropping the bounty if you were killed, which is kind of the whole reason the system exists in the first place. Or one of the main reasons why the bounty system is interesting to me, because it offers you like a sort of counterplay. Either you can deny the requirement of that bounty if you somehow know what that bounty is, which is kind of unclear, like whether or not that would be something that would be possible, or you can just kill them and take the bounty. And if they've already done the required work, you can now turn the bounty in because you've not just stolen the bounty, but also the trophies or whatever the requirement were for the recipe to turn the bounty in. So that was kind of like the idealized gameplay loop and the way that those mechanics would interact with each other as far as bounties and dropping inventory stuff. So there were two things that I wanted to address. One of them was obviously bounties being essentially shuffled around, which maybe is fine to re-enable. But basically, the core issue was the idea that you could satisfy the bounty's requirements without actually exposing yourself to the risk of the bounty being picked up by an enemy after you are dead. So you would never have to bring the bounty itself outside of the system or outside of your safe period or your safe area. And you would still benefit from the bounty at the end of the day because you would turn it in. So the solution that I decided was that they require recipes, which we always knew, comprised of trophies and specific items, also always knew. And then all components of a bounty recipe must have been dropped after the bounty in question was purchased, which means you would basically have to purchase the bounty and then go and drop the items. So this actually still exposes one angle of it being manipulated, which would be coordination with your teammate, where you pick up a bounty and then elsewhere on the map, your teammate satisfies the bounty, gets the items, teleports, and drops them to you. And so that is a bit of a concern insofar as it still there's a way to work around the risk, which I'm not really sure how you would solve. I guess it would have to be like dropped items can't count towards bounty recipes, which is yet another like parallelization of the mechanics to make it so that this doesn't work. But even setting that aside, the what is so that's still a concern. We can put that on the shelf. But what was your concern with my proposed solution about the bounties being like requiring items that are dropped afterwards? Because you had a suggestion for making bounties global, so that if one person gets the bounty or buys the bounty, then the other person, nobody else can in the whole map, or at least on your team. Which is one of the things I was thinking, is that they'd be team specific, because you can access additional bounties as the game goes on but that's also on a team specific thing because it's inheriting from your team. The number of command centers or the number of monoliths that you have, for example. So what was your objection to that system, and what did you think that the solution that you proposed would have resolved? Because in my mind, the ability to still sidestep the risk but reap the reward is still there, even if it is global, because whoever...
Yeah, I did realize that my proposition was not entirely robust, so I do think it has... in my mind, it fixed some problems, but it also introduced others. So I'm no longer as sure that this is the correct solution.
Well, one thing that your solution made me think of was the idea of a neutral bounty board that is actually like one per. So it's not something that's team specific. It's actually like whoever gets there can buy it.
Right.
Maybe those could be something that like either are attached to Bazars or a separate thing entirely, where you could have it so that not just Bazars, but also like wherever you can get them. So Bazars don't just sell masterwork items; they also provide like higher tier bounties or something like that. And those bounties would be like unique essentially. So whoever gets them and purchases them first, that would create scarcity, which would encourage you to get the bounty even if you hadn't already satisfied the solution. So basically, what do you think the problems are with the solutions as far as the general bounty system go to make it so that it's like abuse proof in that sense? Do you...
Right. Okay, so I do actually agree that those problems of being able to just gimmick the system are issues.
Yeah.
Obviously. And I do like the idea of being able to retrieve the bounty, I think. I don't think I have any issues with that. It promotes interesting gameplay, so it's fine.
And there was also the idea that when a bounty is like when the recipe has been collected fully, so say you have to get 10 of these trophies and you collect them, then there would be a audio cue and a visual like sort of expansion of light pulse or something that's similar to like level ups in some games. If you think about like Path of Exile or whatever, where you level up, there's this like
Right.
oh cue or whatever, and then you also get the like a flash of light. There'd be something like that that's like, oh, he just collected a bounty recipe, let's get him or something. You know, you would give you
Right.
the thing you would need basically to know that, oh, this guy's got that. And maybe there would be like a permanent glow that would be more minor that would indicate that there is a like if you weren't there, you didn't spot them to begin with when they got the last item that they needed, but you spotted them afterwards and they still hadn't turned the bounty in, you'd know based on like this glow or something. And then maybe it intensifies with every completed bounty that they have that's ready to turn in.
Yeah, and also you could probably have like a visual tell of the tier of the bounty, I imagine.
Yeah, that could be it. And maybe it would also just create like an icon or something on them as like a debuff that if you clicked on them and then moused over the debuff, you would, it wouldn't really be a debuff, but it would be like a status effect thing that where if you mouse over it, it's like bounty ready or something, you know, I don't know, whatever the thing would be. So yeah, that's the sort of like allowing players to interface with the gameplay system a little bit more so that you know like who's a high value target and who isn't. So are there problems then that you have? Because I'm totally, if there are, it's good.
So I do still feel like having metadata for each item individually will confuse people. Because now
I know you objected to this in the code base like programming sense.
Yeah, that's also true.
But if we take that aside and we just think about the end result, you're thinking it would be confusing to know.
Yeah, because imagine in one stack you have like two items that are not related to the are not accepted to the bounty, and like four that are accepted. And now you would try to, if you try to split the stack, for example, what would happen? Like, it's kind of undefined because you have two that are two incorrect items and four correct items in one stack.
Right. Okay. I actually had an idea about this that wasn't even meant to resolve this problem. It was just to make bounties more intuitive and like just clean. But it would also address this problem, which is the stack would actually be a part of the bounty. So you would have one item, essentially the bounty, but it would also like say it would say 0 out of 10 on the bounty item itself. And then when you collect a trophy, it would automatically that's valid for the recipe. It would automatically tie itself to the bounty. This does create some issues where then you basically we could decide whether or not players can separate out the trophies or whatever that's been bound to the item, because maybe they don't want to turn the bounty in at this moment, but they do need like 1 or 2 trophies from it or something, so they should still be able to like remove it basically.
Yeah.
But my thinking is that basically the recipe needs to be collected by you. You have to be the original owner of it, which is how we get around like dropping recipes for another player. And so you have to be the original owner, and and if it's a valid trophy in terms of time, it would just like you would collect it and it would automatically tie itself to the stack or to the item, sort of the backpack slot that the bounty is in. And so it would automatically build that way. So you could kind of think about it like you would see a progress bar or like a counter or whatever on the bounty stack itself, and that would fill up or increase as you make progress on it. And then you could decide like to unpair the trophies that you've collected if you need them for something else. And maybe they wouldn't be pairable afterwards, so it would be a permanent decision. I don't know. That does feel like it's still a bit of a messy system, but that would get around the idea that like you're talking about, which would be rightfully confusing, where you don't know which ones are legit or which ones aren't. I was also thinking that if they're legit, they could be in their own stack and they just wouldn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking right now. So basically, if you'd want to interact with the items, you would still be able to. So you could just sell
them directly or whatever.
Yeah,
if you want.
You probably prefer to sell the invalid ones first.
Yes.
As-
And then if you
yeah.
still needed some more ash.
Okay, this also fixes the problem you were talking about with allies actually gimmicking it, right?
Well, what fixes the problem is that you have to be the original owner.
Yes.
Yeah. So
okay, I think I'm cool with this system because it's better, it's less confusing for the player, it's more implementable. So yeah, that could work.
I don't know how different the implementation is because I think you still have to keep track of which trophies are valid.
Yeah, it could be like a boolean, or I guess you would just link to the valid bounties or something.
The other thing I was thinking of is I don't think it'll actually be generic enough to say something like, for example, the only bounty that I've put together so far just says 10 common trophies. I think that's actually going to call for a specific victim, like a specific kind of trophy from a specific enemy.
Yeah, and you'd probably have collect
be
10 common trophies instead of just 10 common trophies because you actually have to do the action, right?
Yeah. Obviously, right now it's written as if it says like requires instead of 10.
Yeah, it's not any 10 common trophies. It's the ones you will collect after.
Ones you must collect. Yeah. That wording also fixes the problem of it being like non-specific, right? So if we go to I'll eventually find it.
Okay, this is cool. I think it's much better.
So we would say, collect 10 common trophies, and then I guess we would have like certain supplicants or miscreants or whatever that would be valid, but that would be classed as common, which would satisfy it. But if you have to collect them, then it resolves the issue of allies collecting them for you. And then I guess it doesn't matter if they've been... Okay, so you have to collect them and they can't have had a prior owner. That's basically the only two rules we need, because that means...
technically you could drop your items and recollect them and that would work.
No, because if you drop the item, you still owned it at one point. It had a prior owner. It wasn't just fetched from the...
Yeah, but what I mean, if before activating the bounty, you collect 10 common trophies, then you activate the bounty, you drop the trophies that you were owner of, and you collect them.
Yeah, but they still are... that you still owned them, is what I'm saying. They still had an owner at one point.
Ah, okay.
So if they've been dropped by a miscreant or by a supplicant or something to that effect, or it's like a high value trophy from a structure or another avatar or like a supplicant, a miscreant like chieftain or something, then they expressly don't have an owner. Like owner and source are different things basically. So source would be like the unit that died, and owner would be like somebody who had it in their backpack itself. So yeah, that's basically really. I think we only need that one rule, which is whatever your bounty recipes must not have a prior owner or something. So I guess it could even be like unless otherwise specified, because maybe you just need to steal any item, and then whatever it is, like that might be a bounty, right? Like steal an item or something. So in which case, obviously, it has to have a prior owner. So let me just find the...
I feel like the clean way of describing it would be just the action has to happen after activating the bounty. And collect
bounty activation is an important step, but what I mean is like, even if the action has happened afterwards, if you don't specify that it has to have had a prior owner, then you can do the collection thing that you were talking about, where somebody drops it for you, or you drop it and then pick it up.
Yeah, but you have to be the person that does the action, though, right? So if ally would collect,
basically we're rubbing up against the problem of collecting doesn't necessarily prohibit picking something up that somebody else dropped, is what I'm getting at. So like, if
I guess it's less verbose.
It's less clear, I think. So the other question is, do we still want bounties to not be dropped? In terms of like, you can't drop them, you can't right click and drop them on the ground or something, the way that you can with other items. Because you can drop most items on the ground for your allies to pick up, but bounties can't be. I guess that's probably fine if that is the case. I'm not sure if that's still necessary. I'm trying to think about abuse cases with our current system that would crop up as a result of us removing this rule. Because if the rule doesn't solve anything, we don't need it.
It could happen that people would abuse the trait, and they would basically have one person collect some items, and then in Fog of War they would swap the bounty with someone else, and then now they would try to hunt the incorrect person. The enemies.
Yeah, but they would lose the little marking or whatever if they did that. But it does make it more confusing anyway, because like you have to look out for the aura effect or whatever that makes it look like they've got a bounty to turn in or something. So yeah, and that would only cleanly translate if we kept the idea of the stack being tied to the bounty, which we decided to just have them stack separately if they're valid for the trophy, just so that you can still interact with them like normal items. So
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So just for the sake of cleanliness, we'll do it. That solves a problem that's not really like an abuse case, in my opinion. It's more of a it looks fucking confusing, or this.
Yeah, it's just like general robustness, I feel like. Do you think you should be able to activate more than one bounty, by the way?
Yes, you'll be able to activate an arbitrary number of bounties at once.
Okay.
It's obviously like if you die with 3 bounties in your backpack, then you've bought them for the enemy, basically, if they take your shit, so...
Yeah.
So instead of writing what I wrote before, we'll say bounty recipes. Okay, we'll say recipe components must not have had an owner. Oh yeah, this is where we say unless otherwise stated. Unless otherwise called for by the bounty itself. Recipe components must not have had an owner prior to you collecting them. I think that's a robust sentence in terms of describing.
Yeah, I see what you're going for. Okay, that's cool. Because if you have no owner, it means it just dropped right now.
Yeah, it's just on the ground and you collected it. Which would also allow you to basically, like, opportunistically, you see, oh, there's been, like, this giant fight and, 20 supplicants died. I'll go back home, grab a bounty, and then teleport to the front lines, risk, maybe more enemies being in the area, collecting my shit, and then teleport out. Like, that seems like you're not exposing yourself to as much risk, but in that case, you've kind of like taken advantage of a situation that only lasts for a short time because trophies expire if they're from a supplicant or a miscreant. And also, you are still exposing yourself to risk because if there was a battle there, then there's likely going to be a battle again, especially where supplicants are concerned, because they usually follow like not set lanes, but at least like pathways that are kind of common. So I kind of like the idea that you're basically opportunistically taking advantage of a previous battleground that still has some loot, and that kind of that kind of gameplay is actually even ideal in my opinion. The idea that you can scavenge the battlefield after it's like a battle has gone quiet, because that's how avatars work as well. Like if there's a team fight and like 3 people die, 2 on one team, 1 on the other, and then like the guys who lost 2 people fall back, then suddenly there are 2 backpacks for you to scavenge if you could do it in time, which I think is like, we're reinforcing the core idea of picking the corpses, so to speak, clean of items and loot. And then I guess we'll say multiple bounties can be activated by individual avatars. And then the other one was individual bounties are unique on a per team basis. And I think that's all of the rules. So this is something you pushed back regarding the solo queue idea, the individual bounties being unique on a per team basis thing. So I wanted to basically clarify the idea that like something like this, an overburdened hunter bounty, where you're like the sort of lore of it, if you will, or like the plot direction is that you have so you have this guy who's like been tasked with hunting a bunch of shit and like bringing home trophies for something, and then he's like, I've got too much work, can you please help me out? And so you get the bounty, and then you go do the thing, And we talked about this before, the opportunity cost of 500 ash, because it's 250 for the bounty, and then 250 is the amount of 10 common trophies. But your reward is 1,000 ash item, which obviously you can sell for a profit of 500 or keep if you wanted it. Now.
Oh yeah, because you can. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because you can. Okay, that's actually pretty cool because you have. You can either get the item you're interested in, or you can just sell it. That's actually something I did not think about. It's better than just getting the ash, obviously, because you might want to have that item.
Yeah. And then if you don't want the item and nobody on your team wants the item, then it makes sense to sell it. Now, the other thing is, so if you are playing as a character that would benefit from the Hunter's Harness item in this case, it makes sense for you to pick up this this bounty, especially if you can like guarantee that you'll access 10 common trophies, which is a pretty easy task, right? So it's not really that difficult to come about. So if you can collect 10 common trophies, that means that you and you get this bounty. That's all well and good. Then then that's great. Like that's sort of the imagined use case for this particular bounty. However, if nobody on your team could really benefit from this item, or the people who could benefit from this item have already made other item decisions, then this bounty is kind of like there, but not very useful. However, you might still want it for the 500 ash profit that you'll get by selling the item back. So that would be another reason for you to take it. But the kind of point I'm getting at is that this is like a very common bounty template, if you will. A lot of bounties will kind of look like this, where it might not be 10 common trophies, it might be different like tiers of trophy or variety or number, but there will be a lot of like trophies or a lot of bounties where the tasks are going to be looking fairly similar. And that means that like somebody takes the Hunter's Harness one and you were like, oh, I could have benefited from a Hunter's Harness. Yeah, there's not going to be another bounty that gives you that exact item, but there will be bounties that give you other items that you can use, and also there will be bounties that just give you items you can turn in for ash profit and get an item that you want. So even though it might seem weird that the bounties are not per player and instead they are per team, I don't think it's actually that big of a deal for solo queuing players who maybe aren't the most coordinated. Because in this case, you could still do something else with the bounty system, or you can choose to focus on something entirely unrelated. The other thing that I was thinking about is maybe bounty boards being something that you need to do for turning bounties in makes sense. But I'm wondering if bounties should be something you can activate and purchase without actually being at the board. Like, we'll need to test that. We'll need to basically test how annoying it is game flow wise to like only be able to pick up bounties, which are very influential, particularly in the mid to late game when you can get ascendant items and stuff. If you can only do that when you're home, like basically one of the things that this will test is like how frequently are you going back to a base camp, and how frequently are you going to be near like an item shop or a bounty board or something. You know what I mean? Because if it's not that frequent, where it's like once every 2 minutes or something max, then it might actually be really annoying to have to wait that long just to collect a bounty. But maybe it's fine. I don't want to make a crazy decision without actually having been able to test it. But that's just something that
you're basically wondering what would be the restock timer.
No, it's for players, because if you can only acquire bounties from being close to a bounty board, and bounty boards are only on town centers, monoliths, that sort of stuff, then you can only acquire bounties when you're near town centers or monoliths, because those are where the bounty boards are. I'm not concerned about this with items, but if you're like not really in need of going back to an item shop, then you don't have as much of a reason to go back home, if you know what I mean. So basically what I'm getting at is, if you don't go home enough to engage in bounties, like I don't necessarily know if I want players to have to like plan routes of going back to a town center just to collect a bounty that they can then go and do. Because turning in a bounty makes sense, that like feeds into the gameplay pattern we were talking about where you're at risk. but initially purchasing a bounty and then going out and doing it. Maybe it's still fine because I guess there could be weird abuse cases, or not really abuse cases, but cases where it's unintentionally easy, where if you purchase a bounty remotely, you just so happen to be right next to it, something that would satisfy it, and then you collect it and then you turn it in. So I guess that would introduce another abuse case, but yeah, that's the main idea. Is that like, is it too annoying to go collect bounties?
Right. I do feel like
sure
you will want to be at the town center pretty often just because you want to materialize your money or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fair point as well.
Especially if you have like 2,000 gold, it's not only a 2,000 gold you are not using, it's also 2,000 gold that you can lose and give it, like, donate it to enemies, right? So.
Personally, I think donating, the term donating to donating enemies is really funny to me. Donating to the enemies. I mean, that's our version of feeding. Enemy donation.
We have a quest that says donate 1,000 ash to enemies. Die 10 times.
Well, actually, the die 10 times thing would make sense if you had a self-destruction item. Well, maybe not 10 times, but
tile set. Oh, shit.
So, yeah, I think that that does make the system a lot more robust, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Let's do processing. Yeah, I think the not having an owner thing is a great solution, just because it doesn't mean that you have to keep track of time. You just have to keep track of ownership. So it's easier for you to implement on a programmatical standpoint, but also easy to delineate for the player, because stuff that has had owners is already visible. Like, it's already something we planned on doing in the like when you mouse over the item, it's supposed to basically say like previous owner or whatever. That was already something we were planning on doing, so great. What is this prank that I see? He instantly figured it out.
What happened? Oh.
Your chat. I pulled up your stream so that I could see what you were doing, and then I see a man.
Yeah.
All right, so we figured that out. That's pretty good. I don't know how Mesk misread lobby hosts as autists, but I guess he had that on the brain. They're not even remotely close to the same thing. Must have been looking fast. All right. I guess I should add one stack count to the base stats, although that's kind of obvious. But I'll do that anyway. Go. And then anything else?
Can you actually hear my keyboard?
I cannot, but I do not know if the stream can on your end.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me know, Alexander. If you're still there.
He ran away. No, I have no idea. He might be there. Actually, I might as well pop out that in case some questions show up. So I can keep track of whatever's going on. He says,
yeah, unfortunately, OBS, Discord, and OBS and Discord have minimal width, so I can't even stack them on the same keyboard or on the same monitor. I mean,
minimum width.
yeah, it's like 60% or something.
Can't you do like like if you hold Windows and use the arrow keys? Can't you fuck with them that way? I guess some Windows don't work like that.
No, they still preserve the minimum width, unfortunately.
Oh. What about height? As I guess you could put one in the top left and the other in the bottom right.
What even is the shortcut?
Holding Windows key and then using the arrow keys to.
Yeah, Windows.
Like Windows key W will put it up, and then.
Windows up actually maximizes for me.
Yeah, but if you do Windows key down and then left and then up, it should tie to the top leftmost corner.
I don't know.
If it doesn't, because it's Windows.
Yeah.
Oh, I have not decided against doing that. I just haven't gone back and done that because actually, you might as well. I might as well download that now. The biggest issue is that if a stream is above 4 hours, I can't edit it. So if I go to editor, or no, I can edit it, but I can't save as new or save as own video. Whereas if you go to, say, a 3-hour stream that I did just the day later or whatever, you see that I do have a save as new button. Don't know why, but 4 hours is the cutoff point, which means I actually have to go ahead and click download and download this 4-hour video and then cut it with Vegas, which is fine. It just takes a bit more effort. And then I'll have to upload it separately and all that junk. So I will grab this link and keep it in my browser so that when I am editing that later, it will make some sense. But yeah, just that extra step made it. When I realized that I needed to do that extra step, I was like, oh, I'll do that later. And then apparently later is now. There's that clip, and then there was like a second clippable thing about me yelling about games or something. I can't remember. I'll find it when I look back because it's like less than a half hour after the first clip. All right. I'm not even looking at this yet. I'm looking at this. Oh yeah, and then the other thing I was gonna write here was oh wait, no, did I even finish this? No. Okay. We'll say such important structures benefit. Okay, that's fine. And then I wanted to add over here in projectiles. Projectiles never strike allies unless an ally is the intended target. I think that's going to be true, but there will probably be some behaviors that fuck with that or whatever. So I may need to revisit that and make it less absolute. Okay. I think that's fine. I still was not 100% sure what I want to do about avatar corpses versus other corpses. Creating a delineation between unit structure and avatar corpses feels a little bit parallel, but I almost feel like it's necessary, because if you don't, then you need to find some other scaling factor for the cost of corpse revival. And I did think that maybe it would be something like, for every point of HP, you would get or every 2 points of HP would drain 1 point of energy. So you would revive corpses and heal them, and when you would basically only revive a second corpse if you could fully revive the first corpse's health, and that's how you would sort of gate it. That would mean you could always revive something, even if you didn't have very much health, very much energy, which might also be not ideal. Which I guess we could just add a flat cost to the activation of the abilities. An item that turns your ally into a projectile. That is not a bad idea, to be honest. I was thinking it could be something like, the thing that makes me think of is sort of like a man cannon type scenario, where you have this relocator cannon or something. This would probably be a firebrand item, and you would essentially activate something which would allow an ally to deliberately walk into your cannon, or walk towards you and be armed as ammo, and then you fire them at the target. And it deals your base weapon damage, and obviously transports the enemy that way. And I guess it would probably add AoE or something, scaling with the maybe the health or the weight or something like that. Yeah, I guess you mean that avatars don't leave, or heroes in Warcraft 3 don't leave behind corpses. Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of that either. Or I guess you also could be alluding to the idea that necromancers raise dead, and they just raise something completely unrelated. I'm trying to think about a way that you can have something similar to Apostle revives, but done so after the corpse has already landed on the ground. Because obviously you could just transpose the Apostle system, where you inject this thing across to all allies, and then based on the number of injections, the allies get a certain amount of health as a revive. Which would obviously have to be a very high tier thing. But yeah, there just aren't any hero corpses in Warcraft 3. Unless they change something very radical in Reforged, but I doubt it. It would be kind of interesting to actually look at what Reforged changed, in terms of the I guess they didn't change anything in the campaigns actually, so never mind. But I do wish that there were more daring remasters. Obviously, Reforged and all of the Blizzard products are all terrible, but it would be really cool to have a remaster that actually says, the base product ain't that great, let's actually improve it, or
Oh,
like
you know
even
what
if
it
you think that
is?
the base product is good, you could still change stuff about it to improve it. Like even if you think it's already a nice starting position. What did you say, Vic?
You know what it is? Because Monkey Brood War.
True.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
I won't lie. Part
defining
of me.
stats right now.
Oh, that's exciting. Part of me does want to go back and like just shit out a higher quality campaign remaster than any of these other people within Brood War, but it just wouldn't be particularly engaging, I don't think. I mean, I guess it could be, but the fact that you have unlimited tech and completely different tech from the get-go than default StarCraft makes it kind of pointless to have the old story and maps at all. So that's why it just made no sense to keep going with that. Like I added all of this stuff. There's like 100 new units or whatever, probably more than that by now, and like across all of the races. And then I was going to overhaul the campaign maps and make them from scratch, completely different. But like, why would I do that? Yeah, the remaster for Warcraft 3 is actually a demaster.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing the Halo remasters, and as far as I can tell, the gameplay was left untouched, which is a real shame because it's one of the weakest parts of the fucking game. And they overhauled all of the visuals, and as Veek saw when I streamed it to him briefly, they added sun, which like they completely changed the lighting everywhere. But one of the things that I appreciate, even though it doesn't really look that great at all, and there's a lot of fuckery in terms of like the consistency and readability and a lot of issues for sure. When they went through and like if you press tab to change, it's like the F5 for Halo. It switches between the classic graphics and the remastered. You'll notice that a lot of the times the classic had like zero details to go off of. It was just like BSP terrain or whatever. It was like nothing. It was like a stretch texture or whatever. Like not as bad as World of Warcraft, but pretty close. Like Halo 2 never really looked all that great, to be honest. But they're in the remaster that they did. They went through like they actually went through the effort to add details and like different terrain bits and like change the shape of some of this like the details that are out of the gameplay bounds. So they don't have a gameplay effect, but they change the architecture slightly in terms of the actual like shapes and stuff, which I think is something we should have had. I don't know, in a lot more games. Really, it should have gone way higher. It should have added shit. It should have removed some stuff. There's like weird gimmicky boss fights, which are unreadable as fuck. And some of the stuff is definitely more like, isn't this epic and cinematic? Like in the original games, it was very clear when an enemy with shields lost their shields. And in this game, it's like, I don't know, every time you shoot the shields, it looks the same as when they lose the shields. So do they have no shields or did you just damage their shields a little bit? You never know. You only know when the shield thing stops happening entirely, which is not very useful. Because you might think that their ability, you can one-hit headshot them, but you can't. And then there's obviously all the game state issues, but whatever. Whatever. Junk. Do you remember the level you were on? Because it's highly likely that, as opposed to a hard lock, it was just their really stupid environments confusing you enough to make you think that you got hard locked. One thing the Halo games did that a lot of other FPS games didn't do is they had really long and expansive levels that were like fully 3D. Because you got to remember, like Halo came out in 2001, and Half-Life, for example, had much more constrained corridor or vent levels that were really tiny. Halo's levels were huge and really long, like big ass levels, and it was for a fucking console. And there's probably a lot more loading and a lot longer like freeze times or whatever due to loading or whatever on the original hardware than on mine when I'm playing the remaster. But still, like even though I don't think the experience was good, I can recognize why there's they were doing something different. So they weren't good, but they were different. That's basically it. Anyway, reminiscing over. It is time to look through the rest of this.
Do you plan on using shields?
Items may provide shields. But I do not plan on it being a... Yeah, I guess, sure. Just leave the framework in for it anyway. I'll add a note of it in the stats. Oh, yeah, I know which level you're talking. If it's the first time you're on the alien ship, then that is one of the most confusing levels. Because sometimes doors are red, which means you can't enter them, and they're just for show, except if you walk over to them, they do open, and it's like a fake out, because enemies like appear at the same time, and you have to fight them, and then the doors are blue. Yeah, it would have been the third level, I guess. Predictable. Number 3 strikes thy down. Or thee, rather. I shall smoke thee. Can we go back to Mixer being a thing?
Yes, please.
Why did it get zucked, bro?
I don't know.
So lame. We'll say ash and bounties instead of resources there. I am pretty happy with all of these, I think. I'm trying to think about like systems I'm not crazy about currently. Wondering, instead of strongholds, I put layers. Wondering if there's any additional map elements we need. Was thinking about whether Bazars should provide contestable, unique bounties. I talked about that earlier in the stream. Oh yeah, and I already wrote that, so I can get rid of the scratch pad. Pretty nice. Think I won't be doing this. Garrisonable units that become neutral when not piloted by an avatar. I feel like this is probably not necessary either, to be honest. I thought about maybe like one of the architect roles might create vehicles, but as architect is also the tank class, I don't think it's necessary to have another sort of specialization amidst all of that. Let's minimize that. Mark that as done. Generate again, and pull again, and back to items. All right, so in the last stream that I did yesterday, we accomplished a lot of head items, a couple hand items, a couple gloves. Earlier today, I did a cloak under Potent. It is the Transient Tapestry, which allows you to activate an ability which reduces your damage by half, but causes projectiles to pass through you for 1 second.
Yeah, that's the item I dreamed of, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, Veek basically gets like at least one item concept per evening when he's supposed to be sleeping, and he wakes up and messages me about it.
Yeah.
Because the other one that you got, I worked into the feathered flamethrower, the
Yeah.
disintegration ability. I haven't written about beams, but basically they will work the same way channeled attacks do, which is documented in...
I actually have no idea how to implement the beams, so I think they will probably be added after Bloodborne. Unless it's like mission critical, you think?
Well, it's the flamethrower and Ahmed, so definitely want a flamethrower for his birthday. This unit's weapon channels its attack, dealing the weapon's damage once every second. So that would be the base damage, and obviously your main primary mode of damage would be over time, setting them on fire. So I guess the way that functionally it would work is that the beam... Yeah, I'm not sure how that system would work for this, because everything's a projectile, so... not sure. I kind of like that concept, Knight of the Realm, because it gives you... You can use that offensively, or you can use it defensively if the opponents also have some sort of relocation thing. I think the tether would probably be like phase 1 of an ability, and phase 2 would be activating it to pull the tethered target to you. That means you would be limited to 1 tether, at least per ability. Like if you have 2 items that give you this ability, then fine. But yeah, I like that. I guess it could even be a core passive. It would probably be a higher tier shepherd core. It sounds the way that you wrote the concept sounds very complicated to me, but maybe it's easier to observe in the actual game. I guess the tether would expire.
Oh, that's actually an idea I had. So I basically thought you'd have like a chain. I decided that's probably a bad ability, but anyways, the idea was that you would have like a chain, which forces you to be at maximum range to enemies, so like or to an entity. So basically, you would be forced to be to not leave certain distance, right? So you basically what Knight of the Realm said. I thought it was
So
too
the tether is
complicated.
consumed upon the break. Yeah, that's probably how this would work too. But I think making it entirely based on an ability and just being a relocation ability makes a lot more sense. Probably change this because it's action verb. But at least it's an entertaining action verb. Yeah, they'll be very minimized if they exist at all. Some things are point and click, but they don't interact with enemies or like alive entities, like the potent wand, or I think the potent wand is an example. Or no, profane wand. It happens to be also potent.
I will actually take a short break. Maybe.
Okay. Is that how you spell kinesis? Telekinesis. How do I spell it? Kinesis. I-N-E. There you go. That's better. Although that looks really fucking whack, but whatever. Kinesis core. Let me look at the stat bonuses afforded by the other Shepherd cores. Energy, HP energy, move speed, armor. It's like off tank. We'll probably keep the armor, and we'll say yeah, how would I even access Heroes of Newerth? Is it possible to play a bot game or something? That's something I'm interested in. As I recall, Heroes of Newerth was criticized for being more complicated than it needed to be, and that's why it fell to League, but that could just be completely incorrect. Oh, it actually is still a thing. Hey, you can't steal my shit. The fuck? Recent avatars? Wait, is this actually current? What is this? When was this uploaded? 2017. Maybe not. Let's go to Han forums. Well, it was apparently posted in recently, so okay. All right, so I will take a look at this. Opened it up in my other browser again. Oops. Not what I wanted to do. I think I used that for Warden, or no, Warlock rather. I'm not sure if I have any other good core icons.
Ah,
You.
what's up?
Your hi got destroyed by Discord, so it sounded like you just said ha, unless that's actually what you said.
No, it's hi. Yeah. So I've done some basic struct definitions, and I think
Did
I've
you
got
include
everything.
owner?
Yeah.
Okay. And that would be an avatar pointer, probably. Unless,
Yeah, it's just a player number for now.
yeah, okay. It depends, I suppose.
There's actually quite a lot of. Um, doing dev file handling is definitely something that takes me a lot of time. I was thinking I should probably do myself a meta programming tool. So it basically reads the code of the structs and it like auto parses it to a format. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sounds pretty useful.
Yeah. Probably do that.
One way that I think I could incorporate Kian's idea of a core socket, or I think both of like a lot of people have come to me, you might have also about the idea of like a core enhancement item, would actually be the inverse of what we were originally thinking, where you would buy a second core and that would be what you would enchant your existing one with. I actually think instead you should have the option to convert your existing core into like essentially mostly replacing it with a new one if you're going to do that. If we're going to include any sort of core enchantment or enhancement, it would be through like you'd overwrite most of it and then keep something from your previous core. I think that's probably what we would do, which would allow you to cross class between common cores, but also cross class between like get a higher tier core and then save something else from the previous core. But I'm not sure how we would show that visually, so that might just be too messy, and we might just need to completely replace cores. However, if there's something that I wanted to keep open, it would just be like the passive that your core provides could be also provided by some other item that you could get as well later. So that's probably what I'll do if I want that. By the way, this is really an interesting item. The reason why, or passive, or ability, actually. I wanted to put this on a core because I actually think building deliberately into this is really cool because obviously you can use this to have, like, say you bind to a nemesis ally that dives in and they're like a close range assassin. They dive in and fuck around and get a kill and then get pulled back by you. That could be something that you could do with this. Or obviously you could use this as a pick. So the fact that you can target both allies and enemies with this is actually really neat, and it allows you to maybe like pull your tank back out if you need to, if the plan is for him to like disrupt long enough, and then like the rest of you, fire normally or whatever, and then he gets low and you pull him out, or pull an assassin out, or obviously get a pick and pull an enemy in or something like that. So I think there's a lot of value to something like this. However, I'm not sure if both activate. No, I guess just only the first activation will need energy, so we'll make it pretty steep. I need to figure out the verbiage of this. Okay. You now have a new core to look at. Obviously, tier 2, so. I did just realize I could use the set feature for bounties to have like linked. If I wanted it so that you like to get access to another bounty, you can like turn in one bounty in a chain or something. So you could have like bounties you would get from a hunt, like the hunter guy. It would start with the default one or whatever. And you actually.
You?
It's because Knight of the Realm said BRB.
I see.
It's following along intently, except for right now. I was actually thinking I should grab the icons from Warcraft 3 because they would be more suitable for some of these item ideas. I'm sure they exist in a prepackaged resource somewhere, but you know how it is. Can't find that shit.
I don't even know if I have that game installed anymore. Probably not.
What game?
Warcraft 3.
I definitely don't, because I couldn't install it to begin with on this PC for some reason.
Yeah,
I
I
think the
remember
registry
that.
got fucked during the remaster or something. A convenient excuse, but also a legitimate one. So
Yeah.
fine. There was an item that created Warcraft 3 style mirror images. How would I go about implementing them? I guess the biggest issue with mirror image to me was always that I'm not sure if it was actually random which Blade Master was the real one. But it's pretty easy to tell based on the amount of damage they take. So it's basically kind of like hallucinations. However, in all of the games that I've conceptualized hallucinations in, I've always wanted them to still deal some damage. It's just reduced. And then obviously they still take double damage, similar to Brood War. However, them dealing half damage or even a quarter damage would still be useful. It'd still make them useful. And it is still absorbing attacks and stuff. In this, you absorb projectiles. So it's actually more powerful than you might expect. I know there's an item in Warcraft 3, it's like Wand of Illusion or something, where it creates an illusion, which is similar to a mirror image, works the same way, but it's like any target, including yourself, I believe. So I suppose I could do something where it would be more of a support utility thing, and you would fire the projectile and it would clone the it would mirror image, right? It would hallucinate the target, whatever you hit, and it would be under your command, be it ally or enemy. And obviously there would be value in that because it deals damage. So that's probably what it would be. It would just be a single target projectile. So it would have to be something that I guess it could just be something that requires a decent amount of energy, and from there it wouldn't matter if it was single target or not. Because if it goes through your weapon, it inherits like AoE and shit, so. Alright, I will write that down. Okay. That might end up being a higher tier item or something, I'm not sure. I suppose it could be just a more expensive item. And we would make this that. Okay. Don't really have any good cannon icons, I guess. I wanted something that looked particularly large. I guess I can use the... Cannon is going to be different. It'll be blunt. No, I guess we can't really do anything like that. That's probably fine as it is, and we'll just tweak it later. Mm. I can only imagine what stat I'll need to fucking apply to this one. Oh yeah, and then I need my hex color picker. I like how they deliberately made it so that it's annoying to write down. Mm. Okay, we'll try that. Still need to find this fucking icon somewhere. Saw it before. Where it at? I guess on the website, God-touched items might benefit from some sort of different tinting or presentation on the table.
Yeah, that's probably fine.
Could also just inherit the, like, if they have a set, I guess you could also color, give them the same glow as the item set that they belong to, like the set bonus as it's defined, but that's probably easier to implement if we have sets YML instead of it being a offshoot.
Yeah, right now it says those are arbitrary abilities, so you don't really know which ability would be the set. So
yeah. I can't believe I can't find this icon. I saw it like 8 times and I was like, I should use that icon. And now I'm looking for it. Can't find it.
oh, thanks for reminding me of adding icons to items.
You're welcome. It's funny seeing the I re-added the Academy and Armory icons to the list so that I could use them for Cosmonarchy or Zabalba buildings, because obviously I replaced them in. Oh, here it is. I replaced them in the icons themselves with the whatever corresponds to the unit ID for those replaced structures in Cosmonarchy Brood War. What are transmods? The fuck did I copy this from? Oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Ah, interesting. People do that with CS:GO skins, except you obviously have to pay for those, so it's even more embarrassing. I'm looking forward to some of the most wacky things that people can come up with in general, so I'm sure there's going to be a ton of stuff that I never imagined being a useful combination or whatever. Yeah, I knew it was a WoW term, but I thought it was like an actual game mechanic or something. Actually, this is a ridiculous passive for the pistols because they fire 4 projectiles per hit, so whatever. At least it's a percentage and not a flat amount. Subwooker harrying is the percentage of your victim's movement speed you reduce with each successful attack and expires after 2 seconds of not being refreshed. That's what harrying. Here you go, Alexander, the item you requested. Well, the ability you requested, as opposed to the item exactly, but it is indeed a cannon. I guess instead of blunt, I can say force for the damage type. I'll do that for shield as well. Or maybe physical? I don't know. Stick with force.
Do you actually want the color images? Because Chuck is suggesting them.
I think he's probably referencing. He might be explaining the idea that or alluding to the idea that you can color icons or something, like override the color to be yellow scale, the way that the Brood War is, even if they're not like that. But
right,
not sure.
Actually, the image processor that we have actually applies some color stuff. I don't know if it's. I don't know how it would work on other types of icons though. So it might need some adjustments, I guess.
Check this out.
Finality. What? That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Does this tag expire on death or just
Yes.
never?
They expire. They basically the do not expire thing means you have to actively debuff the enemy, removing their buffs, or you have to kill them.
Okay, that's cool. And we have every projectile fired. You have untouchable that grants you movement speed. And they expire instantly after taking damage.
Yes, but you also fire up to 4 projectiles. It's 2 per it's 2 per target, and you have 1 target count increase from the passively. And these are so you actually get 4% if you're near 2 or more targets.
Is there actually a core that gives you target count? I think you did another one, right?
I don't think so. That would be a higher tier massacre core, though.
Right. Yeah, because I imagine you could stack a lot of target count. Yeah,
you can, and that's one of the main ideas. Is like basically I have to make sure that whatever target count increases are out there, unless they're really high tier, don't also like provide a crazy intrinsic damage potential because, like, basically you can obviously get runaway effects with interactions if you're not careful. So
yeah, I like how it combines with things like the new cloak. Was it a cloak? The thing that allows you to be to like dodge projectiles.
The transient tapestry, ceaseless motion is the ability you're thinking of, where you reduce damage by 50%, but you have projectiles pass through you.
Yeah, that will be a nice way of dodging some projectiles, so you can actually keep untouchable stocked.
Lifesteal is a percentage. It's just the stat itself is the percentage. So +1 lifesteal equals +1% lifesteal. So it might be confusing if you're not aware that it's a stat. Jocks. I do not remember life stealth, but it sounds hilarious. I'm sure it was very funny. Do you have a link or any other thing that may jog my memory? The other thing, Wucker, is a new core you might like. Where is it? Here it is. The Kinesis core. I'll just put this shit in YouTube chat, I guess. So people can actually click it if they want to. The passive is pretty neat, I think, in that it also applies to the target that you tether, which means you... tethering will probably be a mechanic that's possible to do without this core, so with other items. So you could technically, like, potentially tether multiple targets. But the other idea that I had was... this means that if you bind it to an enemy, but you don't immediately pull them in, then they can get a benefit of energy regeneration when projectiles are fired. Oh. Shadow of Hatred. Man, that, you know what? That sounds somewhat familiar, but it's such a generic name that I can't remember who made it or anything about it. Poison could be something like fire would just burn things and reduce armor, or get reduced by armor. Poison could be something like a dart would just penetrate armor to inflict poison, but if the poison gets through, pretty strong and not reduced. Oh, so you're saying like poison would have no effect if the armor was a higher value than the armor pen, and fire would be the more conventional, like reduced by armor normally or whatever. It would just be an extension of damage. I'm kind of concerned that I'm adding too many stats as it is and having like a bunch of shit that you have to keep track of. But the idea of like some sort of debuff that works similar to what you're talking about, as opposed to it being like basically tying what your concept is to an ability that is specifically like bound to a couple of items, actually seems doable, as opposed to making it a stat where you just increase it no matter what. Yeah, you can use it on allies. The idea that the most utility I imagined for this would be slapping it on an ally and then like say it's an ally assassin and they like go in deep and dive the enemy and then you pull them out when they start getting low. That would be like one common use for it, I think. Or like you'd bind to your tank. They benefit from the energy thing, and then you pull them in. Oh, one thing I didn't note is that bringing them in consumes the tether, so I have to specify that. There you go. It's kind of like if anybody's played the League of Legends champion Callista, you soul bind to your support at the beginning of the game, and I don't think you can ever do it again unless they changed her, which is really dumb, obviously.
You cannot, unfortunately.
Yeah, but basically it allows you to pull your champion, the bound champion, into you, and then they can choose to eject to knock up targets or escape, depending on the situation. It's kind of like that, but they won't really have a choice in the matter. They just get pulled to you after you bind them. Yeah, if they get rooted, you would basically you'd break their your chain retraction would have higher priority than a root or than a whatever else. I guess they could also turn into a projectile or something and deal weapon damage on their way through, or if they we could add a mechanic where if they pass through an enemy, they slow them or something, but I don't think it would really be that necessary, and it probably wouldn't matter that much. It would add some interesting skill expression to positioning when you pull the unit back. Obviously, you can do this to non-avatars, so you could do this to a miscreant, or you could do this to you could imagine oh, the enemy is trying to kill a miscreant for a bounty. I'm gonna just quickly pull them towards us and steal their shit, and then they have to wait for the next miscreant spawn or something. So you could do all sorts of different things, both disruptive and supportive. But yeah, back to your poison concept. Basically, what I was saying is I actually like the way that you framed it. It's just adding another dedicated mechanic and having players have to keep that in mind in all cases might be a bit much at this point in development because there's a lot of stats you got to keep track of already, as you can see here. So I would just be, I'm a little bit reticent to do that, but I'll definitely note down the idea and have just keep an idea on it or something. An enemy that enters a radius around you takes weapon damage. Oh, okay, yeah. So that would basically be a dedicated melee type core or something. That could be maybe a higher tier nemesis. Oh no, I already have a higher tier nemesis core. Well, that could be that's definitely an idea for some other core for sure. Well, we would basically have poison damage or something. Amount of poison damage. I feel like some things we would want to increase the power of the poison or something. Unless you're just saying that it would just be one an idea for an ability that's activated by a specific item and limited to a couple items, which is what I was basically saying.
What would poison do, by the way?
Well, Chalks is basically saying that the idea for fire is the damage over time and damage over time duration concept that we currently have, where it's reduced by armor and all that. The idea for poison that Chalks proposed was it would have no effect unless it breached armor, and then if it did breach armor, had more armor pen than the victim's armor, then it would do its thing. So it would basically be anti-squishy or something that would have some pretty noticeable effects. It does end up feeling very binary in that sense, but if it's on a skill shot, then it's still fine. In a sense, there's still counterplay to it. I'm just not really sure how we would implement that outside of just adding it to some items. Different damage types will be interacted with in different ways. Not in the sense of actual damage, but if you look at is it the marksman core? No, it must be the rival core. For example, the serrated fixation passive, where blade attacks generate 10 energy per hit, is a case. This might actually need to be massively adjusted, but the idea is that it's basically a way for me to have items, including cores, that bias you towards using certain weapon types. So, like, force is cannon and shield stuff, like physical blunt force stuff, and like blade is melee, or not necessarily melee, because there might be like throwing daggers or something. But like blade is actual blades, right? Sabers or whatever. Pretty self-explanatory. Firearm is more conventional rifles. I think those are the only three that I've come up with so far, actually. Like there's firearm, there's blade, and force is like a new one. This doesn't have a weapon. This is blade as well, and the shield is force, for example. Wrote those down. Knight of the Realm, TY. I actually have some more ideas for some items that I'll do, but I first have to use the bathroom, so I shall return momentarily. In the meantime, feel free to yell at Veek. And yeah.
Hi.
BRB. Hi.
Hi.
Was good, homie. Oh yeah, I had some more item ideas. As if I would ever run out of item ideas. Oops. What kind of heart of the swarm shit is? I mean, Heroes of the Storm shit is that, homie? Gigantic creature with a large mouth that eats corpses and stores them in his mouth. Corpse play isn't actually going to be that like so common that that would even be useful. I don't think. I guess consuming a bunch of corpses in an area would be useful in the sense that like it denies necromantic abilities. But even then, because it's not going to be that common, it kind of feels like it pigeonholes. Like it's sort of like this is a hard counter item you build when you're up against necromancers or something. You know what I mean? Trying to think about like where I would build how I would filter that concept through the current game state conceptually, and then how I would implement it. I think maybe version like so Tyrant is kind of like the branch that involves summoning and mind control and possession and subjugation. So you could pretty easily like Architect also has some summons, but it's mostly like physical shit. I haven't really explored that much yet. I've done a lot of like the necromantic stuff for the tyrants, which is kind of like a major way for summoners to express themselves. But maybe summoning some sort of like demon type creature that grows in strength with however many corpses you sacrifice for it would be warranted based on what you've described. And then it would just be like an entity that yeah, I guess it would just be an entity that would have a certain amount of strength based on the number of corpses sacrificed. And the energy cost for the ability would be flat, and that would be fine. Because it's more about how you use it. And I guess if it's the projectile, it has to reach the corpses. So if you know that your enemy has this, you can try to body block it or something to that effect. And then there's some counterplay to the action. So you would still need line of sight access to the area that you need to sort of seed as like a lure for the demon. Yeah, I know the meat wagon had the storing corpses thing, which is why I figured it was something from Heroes of the Storm, because obviously the meat wagon in Warcraft 3 doesn't. It gives you the storage stuff, but it doesn't have the beast tie-in. So, what's up, Shamble Man? A glove which grants the wearer the ability to detonate a minion for X amount of minimum damage. So this could be something like... this could be a Tyrant Glove as well. So we would have... Let me write some of this shit down. So... Tyrant... potent hand... Beast. Not sure if it would be hand or if it would be... Actually, we'll say head. Demon corpses. Tyrant, potent gloves. Detonate. Non. Failing. Damage based on victim. Okay. That's pretty easy to document. So give me 1 sec to finish this concept that I was working on. Oh, okay. Well, as always, I appreciate your contribution. I have not played the reworked Evelyn, but if that's a charm similar to the REW?
Okay, so it basically marks the target, and after 2 seconds or something like that, attacking the unit will charm it. But if you attack before it arms, it actually the stack is actually destroyed.
Okay. I'm not sure about the timing game there, but it is possible. I'll just write charm with arming time and I'll remember that. This is kind of confusingly worded, but I wanted to specify that it's overheating so that it would stack with other overheating things as opposed to just being its own thing. Maybe 5 is too much as well, but it can only affect one enemy at a time, so I think it's fine. You get larger damage buff than usual on your weapon, but the condition is that the buff would only apply if you can kill your target in a single hit with it. I'm not really sure how that would work. You'd have to pre-calculate a lot of stuff there, and a lot of things can change just while the projectile is in transition, so... Unless you mean activating it makes it so that if your next projectile kills a target, you receive a buff, which could be doable. But unless that's what you mean, I don't really see how it would even be possible. EBH. Okay, then we had some Tyrant stuff to add.
That idea you have checked is confusing, I feel like. Is what? You have to one-shot the unit, but should it have max HP, or like, should you be the only one dealing damage, or what?
The way I read it is that if your attack would kill the target with the damage buff, then you get the damage buff, and thus you kill the target, and otherwise you don't get the damage buff. But that is very confusing to the player, I think.
Yeah.
I don't see where how you would muck about with it. I don't know what Allure is. Oh, it must be one of the abilities. Duration of the slow is increased to last for this. Yeah, it sounds like a very involved ability.
I feel like when a behavior is like fairly clean and robust, it usually isn't that hard to describe. You have like 2 sentences, 3 maybe.
Yeah, Chalks, in your example, we would have to do some serious shit to the projectile in that case. And if it, like, we would have to slow the projectile, we would have to make it bigger so it could be easier to body block. We would have to do, like, a bunch of shit, I think, in order for that to not be broken. Because most enemy entities will have incredibly fast attack speeds. Maybe not incredibly fast, but especially damage dealers who would obviously gravitate towards an ability like this are going to have pretty fast attack speeds. So,
I guess you could describe this. You you could describe this behavior as after dealing damage, if the enemy has 40 HP executed.
Basically, the ability is executing targets only if a prospective damage boost would kill them. I don't. Yeah. Not only do I not really know how to word that in a concise manner, I also don't like the more concerning issue for me is that it just feels very binary. Yeah, I don't know if I can filter that through the lens I'm using for Onitar, really. Any of the lenses. Just clean these, but I made them dirtier. Classic. I think executes need to be...
I guess digit have to be the keyword.
What?
I DM'd it.
After dealing damage, execute. Yeah, well, the 40 HP thing is like, obviously it's a placeholder or whatever for whatever the damage amount is in reality.
I guess that isn't that bad. But it's still a bit.
You're basically like, you have an execute, like, you basically could just reword this or reframe this as it being an execute if the target is below a certain amount of HP.
It's not new, Chucks, though. Look at Collector from League of Legends. It does the same thing. It has 5% instead.
Yeah, well, if it's like a percentage of maximum health or something, then it's very different.
So it says, if you deal post-mitigation damage that would leave a champion below 5% of their maximum health, execute them. That's the wording for this item.
Yeah. Well, I guess the point of executes is to, like, have an interaction where you, under circumstances aside from that, they would live with, like, a low amount of HP. Most of the time, they're used against non-champions in League, as far as I recall. Like, it's like something that would execute a...
Yeah, the Collector works only against champions, actually. But that's a new item, so...
Yeah, I'm thinking of, like, when I still played, I remember a lot of things that would only execute... Well, I guess they probably did execute champions, but it was usually margins that didn't matter that much. But I'm also thinking about stuff like the Targon's Brace, or whatever it's called. There's something where support item that would execute minions.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably what I was thinking of.
That's true. If it's below half HP, it will... or I guess a breakpoint? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
But basically, it executes the minion and gives your AD carry, or the closest ally, the gold as well. So you, like, double the gold, actually. I do feel like people overvalue executes, honestly. It's 5% of max HP is not that much, and people still think
it's only that much if the target has a ridiculous amount of max HP, in which case it still feels like, I mean, I don't really see what enjoyable interactions executes provide, nor do I see what problem they resolve. And obviously there's a huge amount of issues that could come up from executes. Like, I added them to the Olympian as a bit of an experiment in an RTS context, because I think executes under those circumstances can be interesting. And I still think there's plenty more, like, shit that I'll experiment with there. But in a context where you're only controlling a unit, or a central unit, even if you have summons in Onitar or something, it still feels really whack that you would lose your central unit by some breakpoint as opposed to by actual damage.
Yeah. I guess there's also the Copter Grace rune in League, which basically increases your damage by 7%, I think, or something low like this. if your target is below 40% HP. So it's kind of hard to actually imagine the impact of it because it's percentage. But it's probably a better solution for executes. Instead of being just a flat breakpoint, it increases your damage to low HP targets.
I don't really see the functional difference between your idea and an execute, Chucks. I guess you're saying that your idea would not provide any damage increase if not for the execute, which may like the collector item maybe gives damage as a stat or something passively, and then would I don't know. But it's basically the same thing. It's just the execute margin is whatever the passive damage is. So in your example, it would have been 40 if they're below 40 HP.
Yeah, executes are pretty annoying anyways.
Bypassing tanks' strengths were basically like an answer to the... So the reason why they wouldn't use raw damage is because if you just increase raw damage, then you kill squishies faster. I think, anyway. That's the only thing I can think of.
So the way the Riot handles executing is just dealing 9,000 true damage. I don't know, they couldn't figure out how to fucking kill a unit, I guess. It's really dumb.
So the use case is different, I guess, but what I'm saying is like from a gameplay standpoint, I don't see the difference between your example and executes. Even if executes are used in a different way or a different context most of the time, functionally they are still killing an enemy if the attack renders them below a breakpoint of health. So
yeah, there is technically the idea that is more scalable, but it's also way more confusing for the player, which is just deal additional bonus % of missing life. But yeah, that's kind of hard to...
It's hard to visualize that, I think.
Yes, exactly. So...
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that would provide increased damage in a conditional sense is like basically if you have radial damage, like if you have area damage or if you have damage over time. Well, no, it would have to be something that is applied to not the target because the main target dies. So any additional damage is lost and it's the same thing as an execute there. But if you have radial damage, then it's interacting with the different systems. And if there's some others, like if there's something where excess, like overkill damage is converted to healing, then obviously this would, well, I guess it wouldn't really proc in that calculation either, because the overkill damage, it would only proc if it was overkill, just like normal. So it actually wouldn't matter that much. So yeah, I guess if you have splash damage, that's the only thing I can think of besides some very specifically designed mechanics to work around this idea that would, where this idea of yours would interact with other systems in the game, in a way that is unique to it and as opposed to an execute. But that's the only functional difference I can imagine is the fact that radial damage would also be boosted in an area where executes don't do that because it's just well, you don't have radial damage in League from auto attacks besides like some very specific cases like Jinx's rockets or whatever. I would say it's too bad that I don't know anything about these items that you guys are talking about, but it's actually a good thing because
yeah,
it's for chumps.
The item design in League is pretty poor.
Yeah, but that's the same thing as what an execute would do. It's just that the executes are usually percentage based in these games. I agree that the functional difference comes from the other thing, but you know. Okay, let's finish this item. Oh wait, no, that's actually fine. I should probably move the sets into their own folder, actually. And then we just need to do... No, not that. I need to find the icon of use. I also need to go to the other Ascendant items. Okay. Well, you can just equip 2 pistols if that's what you mean. Or 2 weapons in general. Oh, this is not supposed to be Nemesis. This is supposed to be... okay. No, it's just saying, like, you can have a shield in there, you can have a... Like, most of the time, you won't see 2 weapons. But sometime, like, obviously for damage dealers, that might not be the case. In my head, I was thinking, like, Iris would probably do, like, weapon and utility. Shepherd would probably do weapon and utility. And so would Tyrant, actually. And then Architect would do, like, weapon and shield or weapon and utility. However, there's probably going to be a large number of weapons that are two-handed, and then there's going to be a large number of cases where you'll do secondary weapon or something. I guess I can go into the description of the item slots. Oh no, it does say secondary weapon here, so yeah, that's... Seems accurate. How's stuff going on your end, Viker?
Fine. I'm drawing some inventory.
Cool. I guess I should take a look at what your progress is.
I'll let you know when I actually have something to show, because right now it's broken, most likely.
Oh, okay. Then I will not look yet. I will not be spoiled. Yes, Veek has his own stream running, which you can find a link to in the manifesto. But he's doing the data side of the slot handling as well as some other stuff. Where are we going here? Some other stuff I wanted to do. I think. Well, the thing is, he plays League like I think almost every day, and every day he's also like angry at the game, basically. And he's at that age where he's got to figure life out, on his own. I'm not gonna fucking like try to backseat existence him, but I do occasionally say like I've said shit for a little bit now, like it's been on and off with him, but sometimes I'll be like, I remember on Christmas Day, he was. This is like years ago now. I think he was getting angry at the game, and I said, "Don't get tilted. It's Christmas," and that made him laugh. But like stuff like that, just being, I think it's safe to say it's probably as much enjoyment as he may derive from the title. It's probably a net negative, and I'm letting him figure out if that is true and like over time. But a more direct way I could assist him is actually making a better game in the style that he enjoys. So, and since there's a lot of other reasons, like economic and practical, to pursue this title over the other games that we can make, particularly when it comes to art and stuff, like the resources that would be required to generate the assets. Pretty, it just makes sense. Just makes sense. I'm of that opinion too, but I'm not. If he feels differently, right, it's totally fine. Or if he just hasn't realized. I think if you asked him, he'd probably be like, "Yeah, it sucks." But a lot of people don't know necessarily why they do shit that they may be addicted to, or just fall into a pattern where it's habitual. Okay. Do there's a perfect icon. There it is. Easy, boys. Okay. Yeah, he played Heroes of the Storm for a little while. I can't remember what his overall take on that was, but all right, we got another item here that is pretty cool. Check it out. Link in chat. That's the demon summoning thing. That's done. And now for Shambleman's idea. Oop, I don't know what the fuck I just did, but okay. Apparently that happened. That's a little bit healthier, I think. I think we can have pretty wacky looking characters, but you are right in that they probably have to be bipeds with 2 arms. 2 arms, 2 legs. At least 2 main arms. Like, they might have other shit, but if we don't have something that works that way, we would basically need to have not only one unique model per weapon, but also a unique model, or per item rather, a unique model per item per character type or archetype. Because like the armor would need to be adapted to fit them or something. So yeah, we are a bit limited there, but don't have any good glove icon, TBH. I think that's correct. Let's see if I got everything right. See ya, homie. Thanks for hanging. All right. That's done too. So I'm thinking at this point, we've got a lot of item concepts. This is where I go in and count the Onitar items data thing.
It's probably counted by, yeah, checking the folder.
73 files.
Nice.
I guess I can do 2 more.
Yeah, you don't want it free, you want it 5.
Well, Well, going from 50 to 75 in like 2 days or something, or 3 days maybe. Pretty considerable. Pretty good rate. Probably make these more basic ones. Mm, mm. Looking for like a gear or something. Okay, that's fine. All right. We're in business. Got that 75 we wanted. Well, I think that's pretty good for me, man. I don't know about you. How's stuff going?
Yeah, I'm finishing the draw, and I think we can end them. I'm just adding last little polish thing.
A few more days, we'll most likely have 100 items if this keeps up. Some of that lower hanging fruit would be like the more common items that we need, but decided to go for a couple ascendants today, as well as some other stuff. Oh, I did forget to fill in the set field, of course. The classic move.
Okay. Mind taking a look at this?
Do not mind. One moment. Just go
So I can quickly increase the icon size.
Cool, this still works. Okay. Shit. All right, I'm waiting to see.
Okay. You have some items.
Oh, okay.
So this inventory state is actually temporary. It's not really a real state, but you see like the slots going here. Like probably do 4 per row, per column or something. Yeah, per row. I'm not exactly sure. We probably would want them to be.
We want them to be in a set order.
Yeah,
so
probably.
Head and amulet, or pendant, which is missing an N in your setup.
Yeah.
Would need to be on top, and then chest, hands and chest would be hands, glove, and chest would all be in the same row. So I'm thinking like, I guess I could do like a paint diagram on my stream then, and I'll just do something like.
Yes, I will try quickly.
Add. Done. Chest, glove, and
Yeah, it probably would be a ping.
yeah,
What she just did.
Something like this, yeah.
I guess we would want to define the offsets in some kind of file or something. Okay, I have this for now. Looks better than before.
Yep. And you probably don't need to specify main hand, main glove, but I guess that's fine for now because eventually it'll be like left or right or whatever. I guess right would be primary, left would be secondary, but we'd probably want to do left to right for organizational purposes, so whatever. That probably won't matter that much. That is very exciting to see that we already have a system that, works. So.
Yeah, it draws some things. I will comment this.
Cool. I will pull here. Let me know when it's pushed.
I'm pushing. I probably have to pull. No. Okay, it's pushed.
Alright, I pushed my game design documentation stuff. And I guess that's it for our stream. Pretty good fucking progress. Nice.
Yeah, cool. Good stuff.
Alright.
I guess if you'd want to... If you'd want me to react to the items you added before we close the stream, we could do that.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. The question is, do you know all the items I added?
I guess I can just click the links.
I didn't link all of them, so...
Oh, rip. Okay, so we have Abyssal Feast, which is, I guess, the behavior Alexander wanted.
Yeah, that's from the Hellspawn Hood.
Yeah, and it's... which... Oh, it's potent tier.
Yeah, this is, like, obviously a summoner-focused item.
Yeah, I can't wait to actually play, like, a Necromancer class. Probably with Possession.
Yeah.
That's gonna be pretty cool. Okay, 10 energy region might be actually a lot.
Yep.
That's
it's
cool.
A potent item, so I figured I would give it a fairly
Yeah, makes
useful
sense.
stat. However, obviously, we don't really know. Some of these numbers are going to need to be attenuated, most likely, once we actually get in-game. But that'll be... partially, that will be due to... Like, we need to figure out the stats themselves and how they should scale. And then we can sort of address them. Because I feel like armor is an example of one that I just sort of added willy-nilly all over the place, but probably needs to be more selective, or like adding in lower quantities or something. And that's probably the same thing for energy regen or whatever.
Yeah, sure. We have the Galactic Glove, which I see it detonizes. It kills if it kills a unit, it detonates the corpse. I wonder, why did you decide to make it not work on avatars?
Actually, that's because originally it was just going to kill the target immediately, and then I made it so that it has to kill them to detonate the corpse, and then I forgot to remove the non-avatar rule, so...
Okay, so there's actually another... Okay, it's pretty cool. And it scales with the max HP, so this is pretty good for finishing up tanks, I imagine.
Yeah, specifically if you hit it with that, it will be very potent, you could say.
Yeah, so this deals just your weapon damage? Am I right?
Yep. So that also means that if you have AoE and you kill multiple targets with your AoE, then they would also be...
And obviously you would want high damage weapon for this.
Yep. You would also... or just a low HP target. But the other thing is... something that I haven't really brought a lot of attention to is that anytime it says fires a projectile through your weapon, that doesn't just mean one. It means however many projectiles you have. So if you have a projectile count of like you have a factor of 2 for your weapon, and then you also have like plus like additional targets or additional factors elsewhere. Basically, for that attack, every projectile is enchanted or whatever. So that means that, like, for example, if you had the, I'm not sure, I think you saw the Apocalypse pistols yeah, you did. They have +1 target count intrinsic to them, plus the fact that they have factor of 2. So if you were near 2 enemies, you would fire 4 projectiles. If you activated this ability and you were near 2 enemies, well, I guess the tricky part is activating an ability that requires you to target something if it has more than 1 target count. I guess you'd just be able to fire multiple times per cast or something if you have more target count, more than 1.
And my question is, does this work on both weapons or only the main weapon?
Oh, because it's in a glove. It's not an enchantment thing. It's like just an ability.
Oh, it's a hand thing. Okay, I see. So in one hand you would have this, and in the other you would have the actual weapon that gives you stats.
No, this is a glove. So you would wear it as a glove. It just doesn't
Oh.
enchant just one weapon. The galactic glove is a actual glove, obviously.
It has the hand flag, so that's
Oh.
why I was confused.
Yeah, it's just I don't know why the fuck it has a hand flag. Why would that be the case?
Okay. That's cool. We have
because I'm still tracking the item slot through that, and so I just didn't change it because I had to copy. There was no glove in this category, so I had to copy pasted it from a hand item. That's why.
It
should be fixed now.
Okay. So the kinase core, and this is, I imagine, Iris? Shepherd?
Kinesis core, yeah. It's like telekinesis, but without the tele.
Yeah, okay. It gives you HP, energy, a lot of max energy, some good amount of armor and weapon range, okay. Fires a projectile. Oh, that's the tethering thing, okay. What does it mean to tether? Is it just like a link that does nothing, or?
Well, it's specifically abilities that tether. So there will be other abilities that tether, which means the Battlebound passive will apply to them as well.
Okay. So the tethering by itself does nothing, but if you recall, it does something, and also the passive, I guess?
Yep. It does nothing by itself besides whatever the passive effects are, assuming there are.
I see.
Effects.
Okay.
And then you reactivate it to bring them back.
Okay,
I was thinking it'll probably bring them back the same way that a Blitzcrank hook would bring somebody to you in League. So it's like ignores terrain, ignores other enemies.
I see. Okay. What else? What did I miss?
The Plate of Antiquity is right below the Kinesis core.
Okay. Imagine an enemy debuffs them, causing any attacks targeted at you at 5 overheating to themselves. Okay, only affects one enemy.
Obviously, the overheating will stay on the enemy, but if you... It's sort of like a taunt, almost.
What is overheating? It's the attack speed reduction?
Attack speed slow, yeah. And on-hit attack speed slow.
Yes. So technically, if they have like a on-hit enhancement, they will actually debuff themselves more.
No, if somebody else, like, basically the reason why it's 5 overheating and not just 5 attack speed slow or whatever is because if somebody else on your team applies overheating to them, it will stack with that as one thing. So it's basically like not creating an additional debuff just to do the same thing that overheating does.
Yeah.
I'll probably do that with a lot of like weapon reduction slows. We'll just add overheating as a stat. Because if it's like the overheating debuff itself expiring at the same time, like that'll be a cleaner interaction than having a bunch of separate weapon reduction things or like debuffs of different kinds that do the same thing. It's mostly just gameplay clarity.
Okay.
There's also the Virtuous Strike Cannon, which is in the it's a potent hand item under Firebrand. I think you may have seen this already, though.
Where is the flamethrower?
Next to the flamethrower.
Okay. Invites nearby enemy to be materialized by your weapon. Your next projectile. Okay. It's cool.
You basically can launch tanks and stuff at the enemy this way.
Yeah, it's cool. And the weapon itself has some nice damage stats.
Notably low armor pen, but yes.
I don't think it has cooldown specified.
That's because I copied it from a beam, which doesn't have cooldown. I will add that. It's going to be like 1.4.
What's the period, like the damage period of beams, by the way?
They do their full damage over 1 second.
Okay.
So if you sidestep the beam, you only take the damage for however long you were in colliding with the beam.
Right. So it's like per tick, but
Yeah, it'll probably be per tick, but or maybe if it has to be less constant than that for gameplay reasons or programming reasons or whatever.
yeah, I'll have to think how to do armor with it. I guess you. Okay, I think I know. So basically, it would be you
It
would
would be reduced
divide.
per second, basically.
Yeah,
Like
you would
you
divide
would
the
take the
armor by
damage
amount
per.
of ticks. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the feathered flamethrower, the damage is 15. So if and the armor pen is 5. But say the armor pen was 0 and you had 5 armor on the enemy team, or I guess you could just say there's 10 armor target. So
Yeah.
then it would be dealing 10 damage per second instead of 15 damage per second. So that would be the amount of damage that's dealt.
I guess
then
dots
divided per tick.
work like this too.
What'd you say?
I guess dots would act like this too.
Yes, it's the same exact way that damage over time behaves. In that the total damage is the total damage over time multiplied against damage over time period to get the final damage that you would sustain, and then that number is what is balanced against the armor, basically. And then you would take that resultant value and divide it by the damage over time period to get the damage per second, or the damage each second, I guess. So yeah, it's the same. It's basically the same thing. You just you need more shit to plug into the formula first. The damage over time period specifically.
Yeah.
Which might mean that the feathered flamethrower is like a ridiculously overpowered weapon, because not only does it have its own beam, but it also applies ridiculous amounts of damage over time. So,
I guess that hits would only apply once.
Yeah, it's
like
beam.
slap count.
Yeah. So basically, if there's on hit effects, they have to happen each second. So you have to stay. You'd get hit with it the first time you're hit with it. The damage over time is applied, or like any on hits are applied. And then if you're still under there for another second, you would get hit with another stack, and then so on. So each second on hits would be applied. That's why cooldown's not very useful for these weapons, because like anything that's a beam behaves the same way in that sense.
Yeah.
So the period is always 1 second for the full damage, and also for on hits. Which is kind of like, attack speed doesn't really apply to these things then. I guess maybe you could do attack speed increases, like if you increase your attack speed or you decrease your weapon cooldown or whatever, maybe that decreases the period, which would deal the damage over time faster and also increase the frequency of on hits. So we could probably play around with that, because that's not something I thought about, is like the fact that attack speed increases don't actually help you with beam weapons, unless we do something like that. But I think the base period would be 1 second anyway. We'd figure out how everything else scales.
And technically, you could. I don't know. Because like attack speed will not increase your damage right now, and usually it would. Like the DPS, I mean.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So you'd want to reduce the beam period so that, like, and say you have 20% attack speed, which means it would deal its full damage every 0.8 seconds instead of every 1 second, and also apply on hits every 0.8 seconds. And that's how you would like scale.
I guess the base would be just lowered, so maybe 0.2 or 0.1.
Okay. What do you mean by the base would be lowered?
The base cooldown for beams.
I
guess the period.
Yeah, the period would be lowered by whatever the percentage, because you're basically, for all intents and purposes, your weapon has a cooldown of 1 second, and so the same thing that you would normally do for operations would be as if you had a non-beam weapon that had a cooldown of 1 second.
Okay.
So I guess to clarify, I'll add a cooldown field and set it to 1 for beam weapons so that people know what stats are being changed, and that'll be how we do that.
Yeah.
I think there's an Ascendant Helm that you may not have seen, Ascendant Head item. And then there's some, just some pendants that I added recently. Ascendant is the final tier.
Oh yeah. Helmet from Hell. Oh yeah, I do think I've seen it. Oh, I've seen the finality, but I didn't see. Okay, so 5 vision range. That's cool. And we have the armor stacking with range. It's cool.
Yeah, that's obviously from one of the cores, which means you get, if you still have that core, you get double effects, and if you don't have that core, you get the effect. So
Yeah.
it's quote unquote only a head item, so I didn't necessarily want to make it like as impactful as some of the weapon passives or whatever can be.
Yeah.
Um,
It has
but
some
yeah,
good stats though. So
yeah.
this is the untouchable pistols. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah, it's the first set that actually is completable for the bonus because I didn't get the other set done.
Ashen Skies. It's a bounty.
Oh yeah, I don't think you saw the reward shield. You'll also recognize that passive.
Yeah.
That's why
And
it's so
deals
expensive.
damage. Okay. Cool.
I think besides that, it's just the 2 pendants. I may have made something else, but I can't remember.
I need to make this website more searching friendly, I guess.
Yeah. At least you have the tech tree chart for table of contents now that you added yesterday, so I can go to different tiers, which is nice.
I do need to make it more sensible to browse. I feel like I will probably color code it a bit. And I don't know if I might actually add item names to be next to the item instead of on hover. I don't know. I'll have to think this through.
It'll be really hard to actually show that, I feel like. But I know what you mean. I guess the thing you could do is with this set, like with the setup we have right now, you could probably get away with like, I'll do a screenshot mock-up. So let me do this. Go into Photoshop. What font did you use for this? Roboto, or is it something else?
Open Sans or Roboto? I'm not sure.
No.
It's Open Sans, yeah.
Okay. So what do we have here? I actually don't know what, like, the pixel precision isn't really that important, I guess. Where's my Open Sans? This is going to be pretty unreadable, I feel like, but... I was basically thinking you could probably fit 2 items per row. But I guess that wouldn't be very scalable. It's also actually not as possible as I thought it would be. Size-wise.
Yeah.
But this is something that I was basically thinking about. If you were going to try to preview it, it seemed like it was possible when I was looking at this, but it's also like something that obviously it shrinks when you have it. So maybe it would only be visible like that if you actually had a display big enough for it, but that's more dumb web dev stuff.
Yeah.
One thing that might be useful is like having a tick box somewhere where you could like like a filter section down here below the table of contents where you could like filter out like certain things, and then also a search bar so that you could search for terms to filter. And so basically you would like show items with and then like there'd be like a Nemesis, Massacre, Firebrand, and so on tick box, and then or like plus HP plus whatever. I know that League of Legends has a stat search bar in their game, where you can filter items based on what stats they provide. We'll probably want that for our game anyway, but might be useful for the site as well. Anyway, I'm going to bail out on my stream because I'm hungry and it's almost out of time to eat. So I got to do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
75 items and inventory system in the engine. And that's how we do it around here. So
I do think I'll be probably trying to stream more often. So that's cool.
Yeah, and if I'm available at the same time, we'll probably just do the same thing, and
yeah,
we'll go from there. Probably
yeah.
So, bye.
Bye.